No one now knows when humanity first entered the Old World or from whence they came, though the most ancient records of the dwarfs record the steady movement of humans over the world's edge mountains over a period of several centuries, sometimes fleeing more powerful tribes of men, other times fleeing the rampaging hordes of greenskins. The earliest known of these migrant peoples are mentioned in the chronicles of Nirn Shieldbreaker, an ancient king of Karaz-a-Karak. The golden leaf of this folio, stamped with the most ancient Khazalid runes of the dwarfs that no outsider is allowed to see, record a pastoral human tribe who worshipped the earth itself in the form of the Earth Mother, a religion now remembered as the Druidic Old Faith. Timid around the highly martial dwarfs and persecuted by other tribes in their home territory, they vanished into the forests of the central Old World and faded from view. Dwarf scholars who have lectured on early history estimate that this occurred around -1500 IC, some 1500 years before the coronation of Sigmar as the first emperor. Perhaps some 500 years later, in -1000 IC, dwarf and Khazalid inscriptions on the walls of Blackfire Pass marked the passing of a massive confederation of tribal peoples from the future lands of the border princes and the steppes beyond the world's edge mountains. Dwarf historical lays from this time also speak of the migration of the humans. Great danger there was in the east, in the lands of our enemies, and the clans of the manlings fled west. Ignorant of the arts of steel and warcraft, they had no weapons that could stand before the goblins and their allies. They gave us gold, cattle, and salt and we let them pass, protected by our shields. Scholars have noted that many of the tribes listed by the dwarf lays bear names very similar to those who later founded the empire, the Hunbarakan, Tudakan, American and Judanic among them. Unlike the peaceful agricultural tribes that had preceded them in migrating into the heart of the Old World, the newcomers were aggressive and the bearers of a culture based on raiding each other for cattle and women. While they could not stand up to the greenskins' iron weapons, their bronze blades and chariots were more than a match for the obsidian and flint of the existing Old World human tribes. Within a century of their arrival, the ancestors of the Tudojan, the Unbarojan and the other founding imperial tribes had displaced the older peoples and taken the best lands of the central Old World for themselves. For centuries afterwards, the tribes alternately traded and made war on each other, uniting only to face an external threat, then squabbling and turning on each other when the threat had passed. The shield provided by the dwarf holds of the world's edge mountains gave some protection, but as dwarfen power declined, increasing numbers of orc and goblin warbands found their way through into human lands. They made their hideouts deep within the forests or among the rugged hills and raided the nearby human tribes. Even worse creatures would find their way through the high mountain passes from the south and east, including chaos warriors looking for glory for their dark gods and mutants looking for food and slaughter. These growing threats led to the development of the first true human fortified towns and villages in the lands of the central Old World that would become the Empire. In the west, the Unbarojans founded a walled village at the confluence of the Rake and Talabek rivers, naming it Riakdorf. In the south, Tilian merchants from the once ruined elven city of Miragliano built a fortified trading post on the ruins of an abandoned high elf settlement that quickly became a rallying point for the local tribes in times of trouble. This settlement grew over time and became the city of Nuln. In the north, the Tudojans continued to search for a safe place for their people, until a vision from their patron god Ulrich, the Lord of Winter and Wolves, led them to a flat-topped mountain that stood like a fortified island among the surrounding dense forest lands. There they built their great settlement of Middenheim and named the mountain Foskblag, though it is today more commonly known as the Ulrichsburg. This phase of early settlement continued for nearly 1,000 years, -1000 to 1 IC, until the coming of Sigmar and the crisis of the Great Orc invasion.